Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel, and ladies and gentlemen, this is why we can't have nice things. Here's a piece from Forbes written by Michael Del Castillo, and it's titled, XRP Isn't a Security, Declares Former CFTC Chairman. Now, that's, again, a badass. Like, that's totally legit. It's factual and excellent cases laid here by the former CFTC chairman. And that, in and of itself, if reported with just the facts, that would be super duper. This would be the most positive piece. But what did this Forbes writer do? Well, he reported what the former CFTC chair had to say, but then used his completely unprofessional opinion and lack of knowledge to counter everything that the former CFTC chair wrote. And so you could read maybe, I don't know how far, maybe a third or half of the article, and it just seems like nothing but puppies and ice cream, which is what you would hope with a headline like that. But then it kind of derails. It's like this train wreck, and it explodes, and it sounds like this big explode. Or that wasn't that big of an explode, but you know what? It exploded, right? That's what happened here. And so what I'm going to do is run through, get you the cold hard facts, and then we're going to do a little bit of shredding of what this Michael Del Castillo guy had to say, because it don't make no darn sense, says Moon Lambo. And reading some of this, I'll tell you what, it really started to steam my vegetables. But before we go any further, if you would please delicately tap that like button, and if you're a fan of the former CFTC chair, or the former CFTC chairman saying that XRP is not a security, go ahead and subscribe to the Moon Lambo channel. Join the echo chamber. Shout out to Poochie, by the way, for tagging me in this along with a number of others. And I do appreciate that, Poochie. Now, Galvatron responded. I wanted to highlight this because he was just on this pretty much from the get-go. And so Galvatron wrote, it's in response to the fact that Poochie there wrote the title of the piece in his tweet right there. Galvatron responded by writing, it's also a Ripple FUD piece. And then Up, and Away wrote in response to Galvatron, I don't know that I would classify this as fear, uncertainty, and doubt, maybe just fake. Galvatron responded to that. Did you read the part where the unqualified author takes the liberty of disputing the ex-regulator's findings? That's called FUD. And absolutely, he did introduce fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So it certainly fits the term FUD. And I'm not going to read this whole thread, but I did respond, and I wrote the following. And this was included in here. The most offensive part of this piece is towards the top when the author states XRP is formally known as Ripples. I think he perhaps meant formerly, but that's not what he wrote. I'm just saying he wrote formally. This is a Forbes writer. Now, I tell you what, I have higher standards and expectations for a Forbes article compared to other sites, and I like them. I like the Daily Hodl. I like You Today. I can handle some Cointelegraph. You know, there's some others out there. AMB Crypto. There's all sorts of them out there. I do not hold them to as high as standards because they've gotten me accustomed to their C student level of work. But when it comes to Forbes, I mean, come on, man. That's certainly a household name here. Here's another one. And so Galvatron wrote in response to another YouTuber here, Thinking Crypto. That's Tony runs that channel. And he's very pro XRP, and so he wrote that this is essentially a great endorsement for XRP. Galvatron responded, "It's actually a FUD piece, Tony. You probably want to retweet this instead." And then it linked to an article. I actually tried clicking on it, but it hit a paywall, so I'm not going to be covering that in this video. Unfortunately, would have loved to have checked it out. And so the Beatbox on Twitter responded to Galvatron and wrote, "What's the FUD?" Galvatron responds, the author counters everything the regulator says and then brings up the missing Genesis blocks. Ridiculous. Yeah, you just wait. And then he goes on to note, Galvatron notes that his opinion, the author's opinion, is coming from a technically illiterate viewpoint. Now, when Chris Giancarlo was the chairman of the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, he became a rock star of sorts in certain corners of the cryptocurrency community, helping establish criteria that eventually led to Bitcoin and Ethereum being declared commodities, more like coffee or sugar than stock in a company. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission largely followed suit, eventually also declaring that Bitcoin and Ether, the cryptocurrency powering the Ethereum blockchains, weren't securities. Now Chairman Emeritus Giancarlo, who was deemed Crypto Dad, following an impassioned speech he gave to Congress where he credited Bitcoin for finally getting his kids interested in finance, is at it again, having co-written a detailed argument published this morning in the International Financial Law Review for why XRP, the cryptocurrency formerly known as Ripple, was also not a security. And that's why it's so funny. Like, XRP can be used to eliminate the paywall that I encountered when I attempted to read that actual piece. Damn it. So close, yet so far. The only problem is he's no longer a regulator. In fact, his employer is on the payroll of Ripple, the largest single owner of XRP, whose co-founders actually created the cryptocurrency. The bombshell paper titled Cryptocurrencies and U.S. Securities Laws Beyond Bitcoin and Ether. It's co-authored by commodities lawyer Conrad Balk of New York law firm Wilkie, Farr, and Gallagher LLP. Methodically reviews the criteria of the Howey test established by the SEC in 1946 to determine whether something is a security, and point by point argues that XRP does not qualify. Rather, the paper argues, like its name would indicate, cryptocurrency is a currency of perhaps more interest to the Federal Reserve and central banks than securities regulators. What's at stake here to the cryptocurrency world cannot be overestimated. XRP is now the fourth largest cryptocurrency by market cap, with $5.9 billion worth of the asset in circulation, according to cryptocurrency data site Messari. By the way, Messari, they put out all sorts of FUD. I just covered a bit of their nonsense in my very last video. They are Ripple and XRP haters, run by avid XRP hater Ryan Selkis, who in his spare time just enjoys hating Ripple and XRP. It's a fun time. While Ripple was valued at $10 billion according to its most recent round of funding, the company continues to fund itself in part by selling its deep war chest of 55.6 billion XRP, coincidentally valued at the same amount as the company itself. Well, it's not the same amount. That's actually literally not true. You can take a look at Live CoinWatch or CoinMarketCap. That's literally not true. And I like how you cited that some of its funding comes from selling XRP, and while technically true, it's misleading if you don't let out the rest of the facts, including the fact that almost no XRP is being sold by Ripple at this point, including the fact that from Q4 to Q1, quarter over quarter, there was either 84 to 86%, I forget what it was. It was right around there, 84 to 86% drop, I want to say, in XRP sales. But even before the drop, it was still a pittance compared to the actual volume of the circulating of XRP, and it's not that much in terms of actual dollars. It's nonsense. But that's what they wanted to put out there. Not only could an eventual decision by the SEC to classify or not classify XRP as a security impact the untold individual owners of the cryptocurrency, but other clients using Ripple services that don't rely on the cryptocurrency, including American Express, Santander, and SBI Holdings, could stand to be impacted positively or negatively depending on the decision. After all, if XRP were to be rescinded, it would be a huge cost to their software provider. If Giancarlo is right, though, Ripple could end up being one of the most valuable startups in fintech. I'm betting on that one. The one where Ripple is one of the most valuable startups in fintech. This is on XRP. I'm not offering actual financial advice in terms of buying or selling or anything along those lines. I'm just no financial background here. But I do not believe for a moment XRP is ever going to be deemed a security for so many reasons. But here's a quote now. Ultimately, under a fair application of the Howey test and the SEC's presently expanding analysis, XRP should not be regulated as a security, but instead considered a currency or a medium of exchange, Giancarlo and Balk argue in the paper. The increased adoption of XRP as a medium of exchange and a form of payment in recent years, both by consumers and in the business-to-business setting, further underscores the utility of XRP as a bona fide fiat substitute. That's right. XRP is bona fide AF, my friends. Now, Giancarlo was nominated to be a commissioner of the CFTC by then-President Barack Obama in 2013. And let me skip down a little bit further because they just get into the history, and I kind of want to get to more of the meat of this. There's no sense in reading through literally all of this. It's just a little bit of back history about what he was doing there. Here, I think this is the part where I wanted to jump back in. Here we go. The Howey test Giancarlo uses to bolster his arguments is a three-pronged definition used by the SEC, none of which he says apply to XRP. By the way, this is the part where it gets really, really good. So sit tight here. The first prong is that an investment contract should be implied or explicitly stated between the issuer of the asset, in this case XRP, and the owner, in which money exchanges hands. The mere fact that an individual holds XRP does not create any relationship, rights, or privileges with respect to Ripple any more than owning Ether would create a contract with the Ethereum Foundation, the organization that oversees the Ethereum architecture, he writes. And here you go, though. Take a look. And so this is where the writer's expertise comes in. He's like, no, Mr. Former Chairman, I know better than you. I'm Michael Del Castillo. This does not, so here's what he writes. This does, however, overlook the fact that OpenCoin, credited on Ripple's own site in 2013 for creating XRP, then tellingly described as Ripples, was run by many of the same people that founded Ripple. Now, this is a fact. I had not thought about this in some time, and so I went to the Wayback Machine, which he linked to here, and I did go through this, and it's actually really fun. I might just cover more of this in a separate video, but this is the old version of Ripple's website. I think I am going to have to cover this in a future video, but look, it says Ripple Beta in the top left, and then the navigation bar here, you've got home, you've got Bitcoiners. Yes, in the navigation bar, you can select Bitcoiners and then developers and blog. And I do seem to remember, because I dug into this a couple years or so ago, I remember looking into this and seeing that using the Wayback Machine, and I could be misremembering, but I don't think I am. When he cited this in this article, I thought, oh yeah, I think that's true. Where it did state on OpenCoin's website, and that was the first name of Ripple, so just for those of you that don't know, the names changed a bit. So they were founded as OpenCoin, then they became Ripple Labs, and then they became just Ripple. And I think technically they might still technically be Ripple Labs, but they might have a DBA, which is it's a legal recognition. It means it stands for doing business as Ripple, so they can keep the name without changing it, and then just use just Ripple, and then it's totally legally kosher. And so, but I did seem to remember on their website they credited themselves for creating XRP, which even if that was on their website, if somebody put that up, it's literally not true, and this can be proven. And I proved it to myself back then. And because you can look when XRP actually was released, OpenCoin didn't exist. Fact. So even if they put it on their website, well, that was wrong, and maybe somebody who was working there in the early days just thought, oh, it's close enough, some of the founders work here, so OpenCoin created it. And maybe they thought maybe that's easier than going into the details of explaining, well, technically, this was created, then this company was founded, and now here we are. So it's literally not true. I did go ahead and run through this page, and I could have missed it. I read through pretty quickly. I skimmed through it twice, actually, but quickly both times, so it could have been on this page. Perhaps I missed it, and it's right on the screen as I'm scrolling here where it indicates that. I did a little bit of clicking around, but then I was like, you know what, no, I'll just save this for some other day, perhaps, because I think it would be fun to dig into this website just for like a fun little YouTube video. But again, I'll save that for another time. So anyway, I just want to acknowledge that I believe that it is likely, and I'm pulling from memory, I believe it is the case that the website used to state that OpenCoin created XRP, which again was never true in the first place. Just want to be clear on that, because I suspect that most people listening to this are unaware of that. Again, it doesn't matter though. And then the piece continues. The original creators of XRP then donated the vast majority of the assets to Ripple, which they also ran, creating a sense of distance, tacit though it may be. The actual data around the creation of XRP was also muddled by a glitch in the code that means, unlike Bitcoin and Ethereum, the crucial Genesis data is no longer attached to the rest of the ledger. Okay, so that has nothing to do with this. So this is why Galvatron is spot on when he's calling this FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. This has nothing to do with the rest of the piece. As far as the he's talking about the Genesis ledger, essentially here. So when there were some corrupt headers, and it led up to like the 32,000 or so of them, that occurred prior to the XRP ledger being launched. It was being tested in a closed setting. A bug was detected, it was then corrected, and then XRP launched. Now, had we known that this type of fear, uncertainty, and doubt would result, perhaps they would have scrapped the whole thing and just restarted it from scratch with the corrected code. But they thought, oh, it doesn't matter. But you could have seen Bitcoin maxi trolls in the future giving, just writing up nonsense from a narrative perspective about this. But, it's like, isn't that what you want? When you're testing something in beta, don't you want to find the bugs? Because that's what they did. They set it up. It wasn't launched to the whole world. And in this testing, they were like, oh, crap, these headers seem to be corrupted. And they're not lost. That's actually not literally true. They're just corrupted. And last I saw from David Schwartz on this topic, I don't know, it was like a year or two ago. I can't remember. He said that there might be some hope for recovering the data, maybe. So as far as are they go, no, it's there. And the blockchain works. So it is complete nonsense there, and so really the Genesis ledger is considered to be after that once it went public. That's the truth there. Bugs happen before you launch stuff. It doesn't mean that there's a problem afterwards. Like, it's complete nonsense. And then he writes here, the rebranding of Ripples as XRP further extended the sense of distance between XRP and Ripple, followed by an aggressive campaign to get media to stop describing the cryptocurrency as Ripple's XRP. Yeah, fair enough. I don't know why you need to bring that up necessarily here. That's because really, and it is fair to point out. I've been saying this from the beginning of this channel. It was confusing. XRP and Ripple was being used interchangeably back in the day. It was recognized that this is confusing and a bad idea, and in hindsight, they should have never done it in the first place, but that's hindsight for you. And so they corrected the problem, and still people that want to drive a particular narrative, this is like an unforgivable sin to them, and it does not make sense. Now, with so much distance between the company that actually created XRP and the company that now owns more than half of it, one would be forgiven for wondering if there is an implied contract between OpenCoin and XRP owners. Does the donation from one group of people at one company to a very similar group of people at another company sever that responsibility? In spite of the sense of distance created by Ripple between itself and the cryptocurrency its co-founders created, a number of active lawsuits alleging securities violations have been filed. And then he goes on to talk about that. And so that has little to nothing to do with this. You're not just covering the facts. It's clear the narrative that you're trying to drive here in writing this stuff. Now, in all fairness, though, Giancarlo appears to recognize this prong may not be Ripple's strongest defense, and I don't like this conclusion that he's drawn here, in stating that Giancarlo may not be recognizing this prong to be Ripple's strongest defense. I don't think that's the case at all. And he says that Giancarlo is hedging by writing, even if XRP were to satisfy one or two of the prongs of the Howey test, it does not satisfy all three factors such that XRP is an investment contract subject to regulation as a security. Well, I suppose if you want to word it like that, super duper, but it doesn't mean that he thinks that he's wrong about these three. He's just stating, obviously, the way I read it, is that he's making it very clear that it would be outrageous if all three of these prongs were not met in a satisfactory type of way here. Now, the second prong of the Howey test stipulates that there can be no common enterprise between shareholders or a shareholder and the company. While refuting both relationships, Giancarlo curiously goes on to write that, given the juxtaposition between XRP's intended use as a liquidity tool, its more general use to transfer value, and its potential as a speculative asset, XRP holders who utilize the coins for different purposes have divergent interests with respect to XRP. Well, how about that? This is exactly what I've been saying in different words about how there are different developers building on top of the ledger for different purposes, and different people will hold XRP for various reasons, whether it's for utility, specifically for a specific use case. It could be some people want to hold XRP for store of value. There's all sorts of reasons, right? Ironically, there has always been a widely held belief that owning a cryptocurrency would unify interests around a single goal, to co-create the infrastructure that lets the cryptocurrency exist and ensure it was vibrant and diverse. Meanwhile, XRP, in spite of its aggressive supporters on social media, oh my God, tell you what, this is absolutely grinding my gears right now, is one of the least diverse ecosystems, with the vast majority of serious development being done within Ripple. Oh my gosh, are you aware of Coil? Are you aware of XRP Labs? Are you aware of Forte? Are you aware of R3? What the hell are you talking about, you damn fool? Now, if XRP owners aren't expecting an increase in value from the work being done by Ripple, they certainly aren't nearly as involved in helping build that future as our owners of Bitcoin and Ethereum. Okay, so there's the narrative there. There you go, Bitcoin maxi guy. Or even if he's not a maxi guy, he's definitely not pro a coin that's going to help a bank, right? Is it not plain to see that that's where this guy is coming from? It's completely bringing up Bitcoin and Ethereum here. That's ridiculous here. And it's funny. Well, let me take a jab. You're taking a jab. Let me take a jab. Well, for all this work that you're talking about and people in the community building here, even though that's exactly what somebody like, for instance, Weetse Win was doing when he created the XRP tip bot, and then now he's created some XUMM. Developers build on top of Bitcoin. Bitcoin still isn't used for anything. Well, how about that? How are your community members, your maxi trolls doing there? Then you've got Lightning Network, which functionally doesn't work and is a centralized solution anyway, which is completely antithetical to the original concept of Bitcoin as a peer-to-peer cash system. My friend, is ridiculous. Now, in a related issue, the third prong of the Howey test stipulates that no reasonable expectation of profit should be derived from the efforts of Ripple, according to the paper. Supporting this position, Giancarlo writes, though Ripple maintains a sizable stake of the XRP supply and certainly has a pecuniary interest in the value of its holdings, it is not enough to suggest that a mutual interest in the value of an asset gives rise to an expectation of profits as contemplated by Howey. Again, this strange credulity, he says. So what's his take on this now? Because he's so masterful here. Oh, wise Michael del Castillo. That's how you have to say his name, Castillo. According to its own site, Ripple currently has access to 6.4% of all the XRP ever created, but that doesn't count the 49.2% of the total XRP Ripple owns, but is locked in a series of escrow accounts that become periodically available to Ripple and Ripple alone. Adding those two percentages together leaves a float of only about 44% of XRP that has been distributed for public ownership. For some comparison, Facebook went public the same year, was created, and has a 99% float according to Fact Dataset, meaning almost all of its stock is in the hands of traders. Yeah, except for you're talking about XRP, and you're comparing that to Facebook going through their IPO. Maybe if you want to do an apples-to-apples comparison, Mr. Genius, you wait till Ripple has their IPO and then compare the stock against Facebook's stock, not a currency which is decentralized and nobody has any special permissions over, least of which would be Ripple. Do you see what you've done here? You're comparing apples and oranges. You damn fool. I'm not actually mad at the guy. I'm just kind of having fun with this. I mean, it's ridiculous, though. This is completely ridiculous. And so this is where this guy is coming from. And this pretty much gets to the heart. So we've gone through the three prongs here. That's the gist of it. There's the one more paragraph, which is not worth covering. We've covered the meat of it here. But it's clear that this guy he does not like Ripple. He does not like XRP. He's driving a narrative, and he didn't just report the facts. And his opinions on this topic are nonsensical and definitely nowhere near professional. Maybe he should make himself aware of more facts before forming an opinion, but I don't even know if that would help, because sometimes when people write stuff like this, when they impose narratives on their readers such as this, it's because they're coming from an ideological perspective, and I've encountered for the last 2.5 years I've been in the world of crypto, I keep coming across that. I don't know if that's the case with him, but very frequently that is what I see. When people make a cryptocurrency part of their identity, this is the type of crap that ends up getting spouted. That's it for this video, though. I am not a financial advisor. Do not buy or sell anything, because if anything I say or write, that would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo!